Time for Ask the Mayor again on KWBE with Beatrice Mayor Stan Worth, but Stan is off today, and we welcome in Beatrice City Administrator, Board of Public Works Manager Tobias Templemeyer. Thanks for coming in. Gave you kind of short notice there, Tobias.
No problem. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning. I have kind of a busy day today. Right after this, not too long after this program, have some ribbon cuttings that are going to be taking place on some recreational features that the city has had some involvement in. One is the Gage County Foundation Depot, Trailhead, the bike repair stations. I think that was a Chamber of Commerce leadership
class
program. And then, of course, the kayak launch down by the river. Start with the Foundation Depot thing. It's kind of nice to have organizations that'll step forward and help contribute to a project like that.
Yeah, I think that's what's great. I make sure we want to say thank you to the Gage County Foundation. I think you've seen some of those partnerships here in the last couple of years, and you think they've helped us make some real improvements to our community. I think it's wonderful we're able to partner with those other entities in our community to make improvements for everybody.
That sure looks different down there now, doesn't it, compared to about a year and a half ago?
It looks a lot different. You know, it's really hard to think of that thing as an old gravel parking lot that it used to be. I think the Public Property Department has done a great job fixing it up. And again, I want to say thank you to all those people who have partnered with us.
Kind of calls attention to the Chief Standing Bear Trail and restroom facilities now. And explain the kind of the retention pond thing. What's that to be all about there?
So again, what we wanted to do is we want to show people, since we are an MS4 community, we have to monitor our stormwater. We're looking to build a retention pond that will take the stormwater that falls on the parking lot there. Instead of putting it straight into our stormwater system, it goes into this bioretention cell pond, and it stores it, and that allows it to absorb into the ground slowly over time rather than being dumped directly into the river. Again, helps with flood control downstream, some of those things. But we wanted to make kind of a showpiece to be able to show other people in town what we can do, what's possible, what we're looking for as they build out their various locations.
Okay. The bike repair stations, which, as we mentioned, was a leadership class of the Chamber of Commerce. I haven't biked for a long time, although I should, but have you seen people using them, those repair stations yet? Or are they just kind of getting used to their presence at this point?
You know, I personally have not seen anybody use them yet, but I think people are trying to figure out where they're at and start to understand how to use them. I think the maps are great that the leadership class put out there as well to let people know what's around them as they travel. Again, just trying to add amenities to our trail system. You know, one of the things we added here a couple of years ago was street signs. You know, I may know where I'm at as I'm driving along, but there's a lot of people who aren't aware that, you know, the next street is Highway 77 or the next one is Perkins or whatever you might be. So those have been helpful as well, just to let people know where they're at in the community and know how to get to other amenities.
I have noticed the last year or so, it seems like you're getting a lot more out-of-town, longer-distance bikers that are coming in that, you know, we think of a bike ride, we might go for 3, 4, 5 miles. These people are, you know, they're coming from Lincoln all the way down and back. It seems to be growing in popularity, at least the connection to coming to Beatrice.
I think so. I was on the trail this weekend, and I saw individuals coming down from Lincoln. They're obviously riding down for the day. I think they're starting to understand the amenities you have here, restaurants, bars, taverns, whatever else that they can come down to and enjoy the day and then head back up. You know, bike riding to Lincoln and back may not be my choice of entertainment for the day, but for those out there, you know, bless them. That's something they enjoy doing, and we're happy to have some things that draw them down here and welcome to Beatrice.
Sure is a great way to stay in shape, because if you go all the way down the Homestead Trail there to the Beatrice, that's a pretty good jaunt.
Yes, it is.
So, the kayak and canoe launch off the West Court Street Bridge down there, that took a little doing to get to the final resolution of that, because I know you kind of had an idea of, you know, how much it would cost initially, and then it was a little more than you thought it would be, and just took some months kind of to get to that point.
It did, and part of that was just due to it being new and different for us. I mean, again, it's our first kayak launch that we built. We've seen some other ones, but maybe they were on flood control structures, and so the river water didn't change the height and depth and some of those things. We want to make sure it would be able to stand up to Mother Nature the best we can. And so it took a little longer to get it engineered and designed, and luckily we had some partners come forward and help us with some fundraising to be able to put that first portion of our water trail in place, and we'll continue to see what other amenities we can add to that.
And at the same time, you were able to put in a drainage component that was aimed at sort of not having West Court closed off when you get into a high water situation.
Right. We put in what's called a duckbill into the storm drain. And basically what we found on West Court is water kind of backs up through the storm system and then comes out on the West Court after as the river starts to rise. Hopefully this duckbill will delay that and allow us to keep West Court open longer and avoid having to close it down in flood situations.
Another event coming up tonight, and hopefully the weather holds out because there is kind of a chance of rain there, but the Community Connections Carnival at Charles Park, Beatrice Police, Beatrice Fire and Rescue, other public safety agencies will take part in that. Obviously, it's to have fun for one thing, but the other thing is to kind of help build a database of people's information to help out emergency workers. How, in your view, how has that, it started a few years ago down on 5th Street. What's it been like so far, kind of building that database, would you say?
I think it's been a good process for us. Again, as we just be able to go out and make connections with people in the community, build those relationships. The first time you meet a police officer, firefighter, you don't want to be under a stressful situation. You like to be able to have opportunity to meet them beforehand, understand the job they have to do, the stresses they work through. And so I think it's just building those relationships. And I think this Community Connections Carnival that we've kind of put together over the years has been a great way to do that. In
the transition from longtime Chief Bruce Lang to John Hickman now, some of those same community relations things are continuing kind of seamlessly, like the department's involved in a lot of, aside from their day-to-day contact with the public, a lot of things beyond what they would normally do.
Yeah, Chief Hickman understands the importance of those types of events and those outreach events that he has. And so he's done a great job keeping that going. I think you have a lot of people on the department they've kind of brought on one certain event that's theirs, and they've done a good job continuing to make sure that event moves forward. But Chief Hickman's doing a great job.
All right. Back with more on Ask the Mayor. Tobias Templemeyer with us today. He's City Administrator and Board of Public Works Manager. We'll have more in a moment. You're listening to Ask the Mayor on KWBE. In with us today, Beatrice City Administrator and Board of Public Works Manager Tobias Templemeyer. One of the big things on Monday night was the public hearing and the approval of the 1 and 6 year street plan, and not so much on the first year of the plan, but more on the second year. That's where a lot of the big ticket items start to roll in because you have the new school going on, you have Lincoln Street, 33rd. That'll be followed up possibly by the Lincoln Corridor project. A lot of money involved. How much of these things will come off as scheduled, do you think? Do you think some of them may be delayed depending on if you have the money for them?
Right, that'll be the big question of if funding as it moves forward. Obviously, we're working with the school and see what we can do as a partnership there to work on improving the roads out for their new school building. And we'll continue to work on that and see how that moves forward. You know, if that does, great. But if not, we've got our ARPA funds we're still looking to expend. I think we have till the end of 24 to have them obligated, the end of 26 to have them spent. And so we'll look to get that money back out. But right now, there are a number of infrastructure grants out there, and we are applying for them to the tunes of millions of dollars. Yeah. And if we're lucky and fortunate enough to get even a fraction of those, great. We'll look to make some improvements relatively quickly. And if not, we'll continue to work within our budget and see what we can do to kind of continue to piecemeal. But the big thing is we just want to have a plan. We want to know that as we make these improvements, here's where the direction we're heading in, not put one street in at 44 feet long or 40 feet wide, and the next street you put in at 56, and you kind of wonder, well, why'd you do that? You know, and people scratch their head. But have an understanding of where you're going and fit it into your budget then.
Well, there is some time before the school actually starts operating. I think it's fall of 24 is kind of what they're aiming at. So you got a couple of years there, but time flies, and I'm sure the planning's underway on that. You mentioned grants. If I understand right, you have a grant writer now, don't you, or a person who kind of works in that area?
We do not have a full-time grant writer. A lot of them are written by Taylor, our city attorney. He writes quite a few of those for us. Okay. But if he doesn't have time or ability to write some of those, we have worked with Send to write some of those, and sometimes you look for outside consultants who help us with grants.
I see. Okay. And there are a lot of possibilities out there, but there's also, I imagine, a lot of competition for them as well.
There is. The last one we applied for, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, the first one you have to have is a certain safety plan in place. The minimum grant was $200,000 for a project. Wow. And so, again, you're trying to work on how does that fit into the city of Beatrice, and we'll work through those. Yeah. I think the implementation grant was between $5 and $10 million grants. So, again, quite large, but we see what we can work with.
couple of things on the school side. Of course, the temporary road has been cut through the field there to allow the trucks to come in. How critical was that to kind of keep everything off of, 33rd or some other path and maybe doing some damage there?
When we started to learn the school needing to surcharge the area out there and the number of trucks they'd be rolling in with dirt, taking a look at 33rd Street, it's an old county road, it's an asphalt road held together by some arbor coats. We just knew that road would not hold up to that type of truck traffic. And so we asked the school if they'd be willing to kind of put in a temporary road, and they obliged. And I think it's going to help keep 33rd Street a viable road for a while here. Long term, we know we need to do something out there on some of those streets. But yes, getting the truck traffic off of 33rd Street and off of Lincoln Street, where there are some asphalt sections in there, certainly helps them in the long term.
Now, the trucks basically are coming from south of the YMCA, and they're going on to Scott, which is a concrete road, which is nice. You think that'll hold up okay during this? Because there's a lot of trucks that are using that right now.
Yeah, talking to James Burrows, our engineer, he did not see a big issue there coming down 19th Street against a concrete road, turning on the Scott, that being a concrete road. And so I know they talked to Jason Moore, street superintendent, making sure they can make all the turns. And so there's a lot more there logistically that you kind of walk through, trying to make sure that the trucks can navigate to where they need to go.
Yeah. Are you about to get into the world of roundabouts like Lincoln, or you talk about 33rd Street and the concept of that? Would that work pretty well there, do you think?
Yeah, 33rd Street, we think at 33rd and Lincoln would be a great place to put one. It's kind of that three-legged intersection today. A couple people have yield signs, a couple don't. And so that's one that we've kind of eyeballed as a good place to start with a roundabout in town and kind of work out from there.
Okay. Another issue that was on Monday night's council meeting, and that was the fireworks discussion for, are you going to change the July 1st to the fourth traditional period you've had? And you picked a proposal that adds a few days to that. It was a little bit confusing on sales and use and how that all meshes in, but any kind of feedback since that vote was taken that you've gotten?
I personally have not heard any feedback on the fireworks. I understand from looking out there at various social media aspects that some are in favor of it, some are opposed to it, and I realize it's one of those we're going to try for a year or two and kind of see how it works, and we can make adjustments at any time to it. And if we find out the time periods are too long or too short, we can adjust those. The same with the number of days. It's not settled. It's not set in stone. It's something we continue to work through and evolve as we move forward.
Explain because it was a little confusing to me on the end of the discharge period and the end of the sales period, because there were different days, it looked like, in the policy.
Right. So the idea is that you can sell through the end of July 4th, but you can still discharge on July 5th. There are a number of people we know that still have something on the 5th, and maybe especially if the 5th ends up on a Saturday or Sunday or it's the observed holiday, we wanted to make sure that you still had an opportunity to use fireworks on those days. And that's where it kind of got a little lengthy. The first time we wrote it was a little shorter, and then you go, well, okay, but if it is a weekend, and then are you still going to allow them to do this? And then you start adding some sentences in there and it gets a little longer. But that was the thought process there, was just people still want to be able to use them on the 5th and give them an opportunity to do that.
The nighttime hour cutoff, you had the difference between some nights it would be 10 p.m., some would be midnight. Was there any thought towards standardizing that, or was that just, again, sort of trying to accommodate when the weekends and the 4th might be on a Monday or a holiday or something? What was the thought process there?
So initially, again, we thought just making one time, because that'd be easier for the police department to know, hey, it's always 10 o'clock or it's always midnight. But as you kind of work through it, there's going to be times where people are going to shoot fireworks later. And are you going to make them a criminal if they shoot fireworks off at 11 on the 4th of July and it's a Saturday night? And you start kind of think through, okay, what's the best way to kind of handle those? And I realize that some people already think 10 o'clock's too late, and some people already think that midnight's too early. And so you're not going to make everybody happy with some of those. And so that's kind of why we said 10 o'clock on most nights, midnight on 3rd and the 4th, and then a couple special other days. Again, if it's a weekend or the observed holiday, maybe go a little later.
Well, one thing for those organizations, nonprofits that sell fireworks to fund their causes, they get a few extra nights or a few extra days out of it, so that'll be good for them.
Right. Yeah. We'll see how that works. And again, they may say it's great. We love this. and they may come back and say, "Hey, this is too much. We don't want to be open this long. Can you close the door a little bit more?" So we'll kind of wait and see.
Now, nothing really changed as far as New Year's Eve, that period around there, that stays or what?
Correct. We did not address New Year's Eve. We have not allowed fireworks at New Year's Eve in the city of Beatrice since 2000. So it's never been brought up really. Every time it's kind of mentioned, some council members said, it's too cold. I don't want to shoot fireworks at that time. And so we kind of left that one off and went forward.
Well, you kind of wonder that time of year if you'd even have stand operators wanting to come in for a limited number of days when it's 10 below zero or whatever. But so that's maybe for another day if that should come up. We'll be back with more on Ask the Mayor in just a moment. We're on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice City Administrator and Board of Public Works Manager Tobias Templemeyer. We have about 10 minutes on our program today. Maybe just kind of a quick projects update. I know there's still a lot of work being done around the community in various departments. One of the things, the library roof, is that done yet?
It is not done yet. The contractor has gotten all the shingles replaced. We're left with a little small area there that requires a different type of product. And so we're working through the contractor trying to see when we can get that product in and get that project wrapped up.
As much as the economy has mixed messages, roof replacers probably are doing pretty well in Beatrice this year, I imagine.
Based upon the number of permits that we see out there, I think they've been quite busy this year.
What are you up to now? The number?
We're at 1,034 as of the end of August, I believe.
And a typical year you'd see?
Last year we had 107 at that time.
And that was all because of that June storm where the hail and everything kind of stretched from, North Beatrice, kind of through the east part for the most. That was kind of the main track of it.
Right. So, and then, you got south again there. There's an area around the high school that got hit. But there have been a number of roof permits that have come through as a result of that storm.
I see. Street work, I know Jason's crews have been kind of hitting spots around the community, making repairs, either asphalt or maybe changing maybe new concrete patches or something. How close is that to kind of being wrapped up, would you say?
I know they're on North 4th Street today, and they're trying to get that wrapped up this week. I think they're trying to hopefully be done here in the next week or two of those types of projects, because, again, we're looking for bridge rails to be delivered late next week. So they're looking to install those on the South 6th Bridge in October.
Yeah. I've asked you this before, but I know, we talk about 1 and 6 year plans. The state has a short and long-term plan, too, and that bridge has always, forever, I think, been on the long-term plan for replacement. Has anything ever changed on that, to your knowledge?
No, it's still on the 7-year plan. Been there since I've been here. So
the reason I ask that is, here you go, put in these rails, and then what happens if they, a couple of years from now, they say, hey, we're redoing that entire bridge.
Right. So we talked to the state here, obviously, before we went and ordered them and had those conversations. We got an indication from the state that bridge is not going anywhere anytime soon. They'll continue to make repairs to it. So we felt comfortable moving forward, putting the bridge rails on.
Yeah. Water and electric departments, work wrapping up for the construction year, or what's the situation there?
For the water department, starting to wrap up for this year on their different projects. Electric department continues to go. They've got a project right now out near where the new school's going. We're putting a power line that's above overhead today. We're going to put it underground. So they're working on doing that. But, construction continues year round. Those guys have always got something going on. And when you start looking at the number of assets they have, it's understandable why they keep busy.
I saw that project the other day when I was out there doing some video work, and I didn't know if that was associated with the school project, but that's just yours, standalone.
Yep. Just our standalone project.
I see. Okay. Move on to some other issues before we wrap up today. I asked this mainly because it came up, there was some discussion at the county level yesterday regarding a subdivision that's just south of town, where they're talking about some paving issues. How do they want to attack maybe paving Lilac Road or South 13th? But beyond that, more in the annexation realm of things, which was not brought up yesterday. But as you look at, the coming years, say maybe the coming 4 or 5 years, are there any areas that you think growth would be significant enough that you may be annexing areas in the future?
I think there's some areas around town that you can see some growth in them. I think there's some potential for some residential growth in the northeast part of the city. I think there's some opportunities for some industrial growth in the northwest portion of the city. Again, if you look at the southeast portion, I think there's some opportunities down there where you could have some residential growth, and then there's some outstanding developments out there that if eventually we were able to get to, maybe you could see some annexation. one thing to keep in mind is if the city annexes something, we got to provide water service. We got to provide sanitary sewer service. Most of them already have electric if they're close to our community, so that one's not a concern. But the other two can be expensive, and so it's not just necessarily we want to run out there and grab everybody. Also, you got to think of the streets. I know I'd be dismissed if I didn't, talk about Jason. He'd be concerned if I went outside and grabbed another mile of county road someplace that he's got to maintain. And so, those are things we want to keep in mind and look for. One of the reasons we would probably look to annex is TIF is a big reason or a big driving force when it comes to development. And you can only use TIF if you're inside the city limits. And so a lot of times you just kind of see those work together if they're close enough to the city that they can be annexed in, and that gives them the opportunity to use some tax increment financing to help with their development cost.
Is there anything in state law that allows cities and counties to jointly take on a project if it's at the edge of a community? But say it may be adjacent to the city. Is that possible?
Yeah, it's possible. You look at Hickory Road. That was one where the city and the county worked together. We cost shared that road. The county paid for a large portion of that. The city came in and said, we'll pay for the turn lane on Hickory. So there was an example of where the city and the county came together on a road that at that point was outside the city limits and worked together. So yes, certainly is a possibility.
Overall revenue picture of the city, you listen to the reports about the economy, employment's pretty good, inflation's way up, interest rates are going up. There's kind of a mix of good and bad that's going on. But from your standpoint as to how the city is doing, simply from a revenue standpoint, are you weathering it pretty well, you think?
Yeah, I think the city's weathering pretty well. I think we've got a pretty good financial foothold of where we're at with things. I think we've been pretty stable. Good news is you didn't see the big boom, you didn't see the big bust. And so it's just kind of been nice, steady moving along there. We went over the budget. You saw the city's cash reserves are a little larger at this point. A lot of that's federal dollars that have rolled in. And so we just talked about the ARPA funds and how those now have to get rolled back out. And so at the end of the day, I think the city's been weathering the storm very well. And I think we'll continue to do so.
Speaking of money from outside or from a higher level of government, federal, do you anticipate, with the big infrastructure bill, that will be impacting you further down the road as for, maybe some money coming from outside to do some projects you weren't able to do with your own budget?
I see it having two impacts on the city. One is we are certainly trying to get our share, and we're applying for all those grants. Some of them you have to apply locally, some will go to the state level, some go out to the federal level, and so we're trying to see what we can acquire. Even if we had a fraction of what we're applying for, I think it'll be a big boost for the city. The other way we see an impact is it continues to keep contractors busy.
Yeah.
And so you're not seeing costs necessarily come down on construction prices moving forward with roads and water mains and that type of stuff because there's enough money floating around to keep those guys busy.
The supply chain and delivery issues, do you see that easing any in the next couple of years? Because I know that's a concern when you talk about delivery of materials, delivery of vehicles for city and Board of Public Works departments.
Right now we're not seeing that ease terribly much at this point. We're still seeing generators that are 52 weeks out, and you're seeing boom trucks that are 2 years out. I mean, so we see it impacting us right now. Good news is we're still in a good position. We just have to make sure we plan far enough ahead to try to stagger some projects moving forward to make sure we can get the projects or the supplies in here so we can get the projects done.
One last thing to touch on today before we're out of time here. It's coming up, I think, next Monday, if I remember right. There's a new law that, and I don't want to get way into the details about it because it'll probably take a long time to explain it, but basically governmental entities who increase their tax request by more than 2% on revaluation of property are required to hold or be part of a separate public hearing to explain their budget. You've been to hundreds of budget hearings in your capacity as a government official. I've been to hundreds covering it, and if you want to put somebody to sleep sometimes, not a lot of people come to them. What do you think is the real impact of this law, if any? What do you say?
I understand the purpose of it. Understand what they're trying to get at. The difficulty part is how do you legislate community pride? I mean, that's what we've talked about a number of times, is how do you get people involved in ours, in your budget, in your local budget? I mean, we tried to reach out to people and get input on our budget to come in and talk to us. What do you think we need to do? How do you like us to see you spend your money? And it's crickets most of the time.
Yeah.
And do I think this additional hearing will help? It might help a few, but in the large portion, I'm not sure what kind of response will be at this meeting. This year, the city does not need to participate. Our tax request is below the magic formula. There's a big spreadsheet that we have to plug numbers into now. At the end, we get a green box or a red box at the end, and then that's how you know if you're in or out of this particular hearing. And this year we got a green box, so we're out. So we'll see how it works. It didn't change our budget process. And the weird part we're working through is the timing of things.
Yeah.
So cities can still pass their budget before this budget hearing happens. But when you look at when we have to turn our budget in, and there's only so many days it can work into it, and the county wanted to have the hearing as late as possible because she has to make sure she gets the postcards on time. She has to make sure they're mailed out with enough notice. So she wanted it late. Well, the taxing teams, we wanted it early so we could try to get it in before we passed our budgets, and those some give and take. And so we'll see how it works out. I'm sure it comes back. I'm sure it gets tweaked here over the next couple of years, and as we live and learn through it.
Yeah, and you don't even really find out about your new valuations until they're certified in early September, I think, or something like that.
I believe August 20th is when we get the number from the county assessor as to our valuation. And so I can't adjust my property tax levy and all that stuff until after August 20th. And here you are, September 21st. I mean, it's a month time period, and you're trying to do a lot of calculations really quickly through it.
And then there's differing fiscal years depending on the agency. The government agency years is October 1 to September 30th. County is July 1st to June 30th. So
the county's been operating on a budget for a while, and now they have this hearing. I mean, it's confusing, yes.
Well, was that just an outgrowth of just the angst over property tax? Is that simply what it was?
I think so.
Law? Yeah. But then it created the cost of having to print the postcards, send them out, the extra time you have to spend figuring things out. So kind of makes you wonder, in the end, is it worth it?
Right. So, like I said, we'll live and learn.
A question to be settled another day. Thanks for coming in, Tobias. Appreciate it.
Thank you.